Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 123. And the title of this episode is Don't Worry, the President Will Fix the Economy Round 2. And as we know, the President has been giving speeches, and he's been making it clear that he's going to do everything for the middle class to help them out. And this is round 2 of his recovery, his economic recovery that we've seen in his first term as presidency, and it worked out so well. And he's trying to assure everyone that he's going to continue to fight for the middle class and help them out, just like he did, and he'll even go further this time. And we know that's all BS. He hasn't done anything for the middle class. He hasn't done anything for the people. The Fed, the central bankers are in control. He is a puppet. All the money goes to the banks. They are in the process of taking the wealth from the people, because if you look at the actions and you look at what's going on, that is what you see. You see the wealth of Americans disappearing. It's all being flowed into the Fed, which is then into the central bankers. It is nowhere coming back to the people. Small businesses can't get loans. Unemployment is at all-time highs. And where is the money? The stock market. And when the stock market crashes, all that money that's lost will flow right back into the big investors and into the Fed, and everything will disappear. And that's what you see. That is what's going on. I mean, under the first term of the president and now the second term, he already has a city where the main manufacturing is where it's at, and it's Detroit, and that completely has to go bankrupt. And now we see Chicago, New York City, and Philadelphia, and all these other cities on their way down. And this is why all these cities are creating all these laws that have to do with taking the guns from the people, taking the rights from the people. Stop and frisk. Tell on your neighbor. We'll give you $500 if you think somebody has an illegal gun. The DHS is working with all the local law enforcement in these big cities that are near default. And this is why they're doing it, because they know what's coming. They know what's happening. Okay, before I get started with the economic collapse news, I just wanted to thank those people who have donated to the x22report.com site. The money goes to, and I listed some of the things where the money goes on the website on the top right-hand side. It goes to the server for virus and malware protection, support of the website, backup software. So I listed a couple things so you know where your money is going, and you know why. You know, when you give it, you know where it's helping and keeping everything running. And let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, Greece has already spent 75% of the bank bailout cash already. And the Eurozone taxpayers and the IMF are left wondering what their bailout funds have been spent on in Greece. And they seem to be running out of these funds, and they're looking that they still have a lot of bad loans. They have no revenue coming in. Unemployment is very, very high, around 30% or so, maybe just right under that. And they are running out of funds quickly, and sooner or later they will need another bailout to keep them going. Because you have to remember, when you have no revenue and you keep laying off people, because Greece had to, to get more of their debt, which is money from the IMF, the European nation, the European Union, they have to get rid of the state employees, and they roughly had to get rid of around 25,000. I think it was 12,500 the first go around, and then the second go around another 12,500. Again, now these people, increase the unemployment. They have no work. They're not contributing. So now the government has more debt, more payments, more interest. There are no tax revenues coming in. So what happens? The money runs out. Everyone wants to know, what are you using all this money for? And the cycle just keeps going and going until they can't do it anymore, and eventually it will end. And the people will not be able. The Greece government will not be able to keep this up because once you lay off everybody, what's left? And again, we know these central bankers, we know what they want. They want the natural resources in Greece, they want the natural resources, and that is land, gas, gold, anything that these countries have, hard assets, that's what they want. They're doing the same thing to Cyprus. They'll be doing it to Italy, Portugal, Spain. In America, they'll be doing it. It will be happening everywhere. Now, a couple episodes back, we talked about how Spain, their unemployment numbers, went down. It's at 26%, and it came down like 0.9% or something. And there was an interesting report, and I think this was in Zero Hedge, where they broke down exactly what was going on, and it looks like they're starting the unemployment manipulation, just like America has been using. Change the calculation, make everything look better, and we can show that we are improving. And I wouldn't, if I was Spain, I wouldn't be going around, wow, we're down to 26%. That just doesn't make it, it's not a good unemployment rate. But this is what this says. 76,000 people have left the labor market. Retirees, people have stopped looking for work. 107,400 men and 41,700 women found temporary and precarious jobs, of which 60% were temporary contracts. So here we go again. They're counting people who get, one job, one temporary job, two temporary jobs as full-time jobs. But again, these are underemployed. If you were making, I'll throw out a figure, $40,000 before, and you're going to get a job that's temporary for $11 an hour, that really doesn't support your family or yourself, and it shouldn't really be counted as a job. the, so they're basically doing the same thing as what America does. If you're underemployed or if you have a temp contract, you're fully employed. And this goes on to say that 50,000 permanent contracts were lost in quarter two. Long-term unemployment remains unaltered, as only 3,500 people in the category found a temporary job in the second quarter. Okay, now let's move on here. Bank of America, their whistleblowers are coming out saying that they were told to lie about mortgages because President Obama had the Home Affordable Modification Program, which allowed people who were underwater in their homes to refinance their house and to get everything adjusted. And the bank employees were told to lie, to stall, to keep asking people for more documentation, or we don't have the correct documentation. And this goes on to say that during a blitz, a single team would decline between 600 and 1,500 modification files at a time. He said in a sworn statement, in order to justify such mass denials, employees devised fictitious reasons for the rejections, such as claiming that the homeowner had not filed the appropriate paperwork when they really had. And it goes on to say, we were told to lie to customers and claim that Bank of America had not received documents it had requested. And this went on from 2007 to 2012. We were told that admitting that the bank received documents would open a can of worms, and Bank of America was required to underwrite application within 30 days of receiving homeowners' documents, but the bank did not have adequate staff for the task, and they made the deadline go past 30 days, and this way they just kept people waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing ever happened. And this is why you heard in the market and you saw that a lot of people were trying to get their homes refinanced, but they couldn't. And this is the main problem. And if you think it was just Bank of America, I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was to every single bank using the same tactics, almost like robo-signing on the foreclosures and foreclosing on people's properties that they paid in full, they had no mortgage, but they were being foreclosed upon. The whole thing is a scam. It's fake. It's an illusion, and they're doing this not to help the people, but to help the banks, to help the Fed, to help everyone but the people. Now, the Federal Emergency Energy Regulation Committee, FERC, is looking into J.P. Morgan, and they're accused by manipulating the power markets, and they're accused of many things. They're accused of metal. They're having a probe into the manipulation of metals in a warehouse, um, and they are being probed for LIBOR. They're being probed for many different things, and the big banks don't just manipulate energy. The big banks just don't manipulate LIBOR. The big banks do a lot more. And they've been doing a lot. They've been manipulating interest rates. The currency markets have been manipulated. Gold and silver has been manipulated. Oil prices have been manipulated. And there are so many other markets that they have manipulated. They've been receiving so much money from the Fed that they have the ability to create and make the market the way the Fed wants it, and that's what we're seeing right now. Just like the stock market, it is reaching all-time new highs. I know it was down a little bit in the red today, but the high-frequency plunge protection team kept it from going much lower, and it only, fell by like 5 points or so in the red, something like that. But, we will see tomorrow that they will pump the market back up. Just like the Nikkei, it came down 1,000 points and it was pumped up again. And this is what they're doing. They're putting their fingers in the dam, holding everything together until they can't anymore. And again, I believe that will be coming this fall. Just to show you how great the economy is doing and how the president is going to help out again, and what a fantastic job he's been doing. The retail sales slow in the week. U.S. retail sale receipts declined 1.6% in the week that ended Friday, and retail stores such as the sales of discretionary items such as TVs and things that people really don't need on a daily basis has seen a decline, but stores with groceries, drugs, wholesale clubs, dollar stores have been staying strong. Well, of course that makes sense because those are the stores, dollar store, drugs, food, wholesale. People are looking to get things cheaper. People who are out of work, on food stamps, underemployed, they're not going to the major retailers and buying a new HD TV, bringing it home, going out and buying a whole new surround sound system, going out buying a new lawnmower, a new snow blower, whatever they need. They're not doing this at this time because money is tight, and they're just getting by buying the basics. And there is no surprise that retail sales are slow. We're seeing that mortgage applications have taken a plunge. Home builders are seeing traffic decrease. And in the beginning of this year, retail stores, major retail chains, are closing a lot of their stores, like Best Buy, Radio Shack, GameStop, J.C. Penney, and all these stores are closing hundreds and hundreds of stores, laying off people, which will just add to the unemployment numbers. And with all these people being laid off, the Fed will manipulate the numbers, and you'll see unemployment go down again. Now, consumer confidence, along with retails, taking a plunge, mortgage applications taking a plunge. Soon we will see the rest of the housing sector take a plunge. Consumer confidence slips to most in 4 months, and the future outlook uh, by Americans they're saying it's not looking good, and we're seeing this take a dive also, and it all comes into play into everything that we're seeing today. Now, of course, we're seeing all this news and everything that the economy is not doing well, and we see the housing market not doing well, and we see retail is not doing well. Well, from all of this now, since people have been pushed out of the market for homes because rates have risen, and people who are underemployed, who lost their house, have to rent now, we're seeing a surge in rentals, and because more people are looking into uh, rentals, the rent prices are starting to climb because when there's a huge demand for housing rentals, people take advantage and raise the price, just like back prior to 2008 when we saw a shortage of homes and a lot of people wanted the same home, prices skyrocketed. Well, a lot of people are looking to rent now, and there are very few rentals, we're seeing prices increase. And lately, we've seen the median price here, which was around like $700 a month or so, now is up to $960. So we're seeing an increase of the amount of rent that people are charging. And to bring this even a step further, people's incomes are not going up. Housing prices, are continually rising because of the housing bubble. Rents are moving up, but income that people are making is either staying the same or dropping. If you get laid off and you have to get two temporary jobs, you're making less money. You might not be getting bonuses in your job now. They might be cutting out the cost of living for your salary. So we're seeing the U.S. wages either staying steady or decreasing at this time. Now, there are other companies that are having a problem. Office Depot posts loss in line with expectations. And they go on to say that a lackluster demand for laptops and belt tightening by its federal customers hurt sales, which fell 4%. And they don't see this improving anytime soon at this point. Air France could cut 3,000 more jobs. The figure going around is between 2,500 and 3,000 job cuts. Coach sees their sales declining, and the company told Wall Street on Tuesday they are not expecting any improvement in this new fiscal year, and they're hoping that the holiday season kind of reignites their sales, but it doesn't seem like they're too positive on this. Peugeot is getting a bailout from the EU, and they're looking to cut 11,200 jobs over the next 2 years. So we're seeing a lot of job cuts. We're seeing a lot of retail um, uh, uh, sales declining, and we're seeing a lot of stores closing, and this does not look good for the economy. But on the other hand, President Obama came out, gave his speeches, and one of the things that he said is the economy would be much better off. Unemployment would be 6.5%, and the national deficit would be in a decline if there were more federal, state, and local government workers. That's his answer. So we have a deficit. We have a national debt of 17, getting close to 17 trillion. He wants to increase the national debt because to hire more federal and government workers that produce absolutely nothing. There's no manufacturing in it. There is absolutely nothing. So the Fed would have to print the money where the government would have to borrow it to pay for more jobs in the federal government. And where does that leave us? It leaves us with a lot more debt. Yeah, people will have work and people will buy retail, but there's still no manufacturing. And the government continually goes into debt higher and higher and higher. And before you know it, the debt can't be serviced anymore. And then what happens? So I don't know if that theory really works out. Okay, let's move on here. Now, we just talked about the national debt. Now, this has been the 70 straight days that the Treasury says the debt was stuck at exactly $16,699,396,000,000. And, they can stop the clock, they can do whatever they want, but do you really think that they stopped spending? Really? Yeah, they're still spending, they're just not adding it. So this means, because if they did stop spending, think about it. If they actually stopped spending, every single thing would stop and halt. No one would get their paychecks anywhere. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, everything would stop. The military would not get any more money. All the people, fighting, everyone, no salary, nothing. Everything would come to a screeching halt. So all they did was they stopped the clock to show that this is where we're supposed to be, because this is all we're allowed, and it's kind of meaningless. I mean, if you really think about it, it is all meaningless. The government has increased the debt ceiling 14 times. It's impossible for them not to at this point. It's never going to work. It will never be able to make this debt go in the opposite direction. That time has come and gone. Uh, it just, and they know it, and this is why we're heading towards the economic collapse. Okay, let's move on here. Now, Russia is urging an end to Syrian carnage by international terrorists, and the Russian Foreign Ministry has demanded an end to the bloodshed unleashed in Syria by what it describes as international terrorists backed by the U.S. and its regional Arab allies and Turkey. Yes, all those countries that are controlled by the U.S. and the central bankers are paying the mercenaries to wage war on Syria because Syria is not using the US dollar as the reserve currency, and eventually the central bankers see getting into Syria a direct path into Iran, which is also not trading in the US dollar as the reserve currency. So and Russia knows eventually what is going to happen. They see it. They know it. They know exactly what the U.S. government is doing with the central bankers, and they realize that World War III is at hand and very, very close to starting. And Iran also realizes that eventually that World War III will come and war will come to that region. Iran is again asserting that Armageddon is at hand and that the Islamic regime's followers, indeed all of Islam, must prepare for a monumental change in the world. And they realize that the central bankers, U.S. government, will continue to push and go down fighting just to keep the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and that will lead to World War III. Now, 43 individuals or companies who are supporters of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan have been giving U.S. military contracts despite the knowledge of American officials. And, the U.S. government says, they can't do anything about this, and they are blocked by these individuals or companies from getting U.S. military contracts and to cancel the contracts that have already been awarded to them, and they can't do anything about it, which we all know it's just BS, and it's all their friends supplying Al-Qaeda, which is a government-paid terrorist group, along with the Taliban, the same Al-Qaeda that we're supporting in Syria to fight against the Syrian government. Interesting. Now, a while back, reported on an episode that the U.S. will not be leaving Afghanistan because of the natural resources. They have a huge copper deposit there. They have lithium. They have many other natural resources there. And the Pentagon said Tuesday it is offering no zero option for the number of troops that will remain in Afghanistan after the U.S. combat mission ends in December 24th, 2014. It said in a report to Congress that substantial long-term military support will be needed to ensure that Afghans can hold off the Taliban insurgency, because the central bankers and the U.S. government know that China is making a move to um, to take hold of the copper deposits and the lithium deposits and the natural resources, and these are hard assets. And the U.S. government central bankers are not just going to leave those behind. Plus, they protect the poppy fields, which they use as they produce opium, which they sell onto the market. And they are not going to leave and just leave all of that. There's no way, and they're saying they're not going to. Now, as we know, the United States government imposes sanctions on Iran and Syria, and to get around it, they make deals like trading electricity, trading gold, bartering different items. And now Syria and Iran have created a pact where the two countries will trade petroleum and gas, and the Iran is going to give a credit line and means to overcome economic sanctions and the war waged on the Syrian people, and provide uh, Syria with the gas and petroleum they need. And there's always a way to get around the sanctions, and it's the sanctions are only there to provoke Iran and Syria into doing something they normally wouldn't do and start a war. And you have to realize that Iran, I think the last time they actually even started anything was in 1826, and ever since then they have never provoked or done anything. But think about it, how many times has the United States government provoked a war or lashed out, or Israel just went in bombing? And we have to think about this. Okay, let's move on here. Now, we are seeing the buildup of armed forces. I said this in episode 122, and we are seeing more of this. Now, the U.S. is going to create an arc around China, and what they are doing is they are using this aggressive approach and using its fighters, bombers, and ships to signal its territorial claims across the Pacific, um, to create this arc around the area of China for any type of serious incident in the region. And this goes on to say that the latest American fighters and bombers will be deployed in an arc from Japan to India, lacing across all of China's maritime regions. America's most capable all-around air weapon, the F-35, will be deployed first in the Pacific once it achieves initial operating compatibility. And the Air Force F-35 will probably head to four bases: Misawa in Japan, Kadena, Japan, Osan Air Base, Korea, and Kunsan Air Base, Korea. And we are seeing the complete buildup of arms, and they are moving assets and protecting the Pacific. The U.S. has their assets in Jordan, all around the Mediterranean. Russia and China have their assets in position in Armenia, and Russia's looking at Cyprus to put their base. The United States is in the Philippines, and we're seeing this happen all over the place, and they are just preparing for World War III. Now, the U.S. judge rules that the Espionage Act does not require proof of any harm done, and this goes on to say that Judge Colleen Cotelli ruled that the prosecution does not need to show that information Kim allegedly leaked could damage U.S. national security or benefit a foreign power, even potentially. So now um, they don't even have to show damage, and this makes it much easier for the prosecutor. All they have to say, you're a whistleblower, and the prosecution doesn't have to prove anything anymore. And we can see the rights being stripped away once again. Now, on to Obamacare. Obamacare, it's amazing with Obamacare. Now, if the Congress would have read what they were signing, this would have never have passed. And we are seeing that Obamacare doesn't require the government to pay the premiums as it does for private employees providing coverage for their workers. And very soon, these employees in Congress, in the government, who are low-paid employees, will have to go out to the exchange and purchase their own health insurance. And it's so cheap. For an individual, it's only $5,000 a year and $11,000 for families. It's so inexpensive just to go out and purchase, this. And what's happening is Rep. Billy Long, he's saying this is very serious. Um, He said his staff is freaked out, noting that the modest salaries congressional aides are paid could make it impossible to continue working on Capitol Hill. Well, guess what? Go outside of the capital of Washington, of the United States, which is Washington, and look around and see the rest of the people. It's the same freaking problem. And guess what? If these people don't take Obamacare, guess what? They're taxed. They're penalized. They have to give money. They're forced to do one or the other. So how could this be good for the people? Now they're noticing. Now we see the DHS is trying to get involved in everything using the executive orders and hooking up with local law enforcement. And now the DHS is requiring permits for live music in a bar. And the person who has a bar, the DHS came in and said you can't have live music. You have to get and pay for a special permit to have live music. And when DHS was first created, it was really meant to stop terrorists. But now, again, the actions of what DHS is, if you go to their site, you'll see they never put any warnings or anything on their terrorist warning site. It's always blank. What they are doing now is they are put in place to keep the Americans controlled. They are put in place to make sure that they know who's who. They are put in place to control everyone during the economic collapse. They are put in place to control everyone after the economic collapse. They are put here to make sure they round up the people who are on the list and bring them over to certain areas and get those people who are troublemakers, who could pose a problem to the government, and escort them to either a FEMA camp or someplace else. And we're seeing that they're getting involved in all local law enforcement and government, which is really none of their business. But of course, the government and the laws that they pass and the executive orders allows them to do this. And the owner of the bar went on to say, if the DHS can regulate the performance of song, where do you think they'll stop? Well, they won't stop. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you have to remember, it already came out, and it's on my timeline, and it's the tab up top where it says economic collapse. The DHS doesn't even need a warrant or anything to search safety deposit boxes. They don't need anything like that. So you could see where this is going. They're moving more and more rights from the people, and the people don't even realize it. And I just wanted to end up the report with the important things we don't have money for and the crazy things we do have money for. The city of Detroit says that that it is totally broke and has no money for pensions. But somehow the city has $444 million to spend on a new hockey arena for the Detroit Red Wings. Large numbers of federal employees have been hit with mandatory furloughs in 2013 due to the sequester, but somehow the federal government is able to spend tens of millions of dollars to fill our skies with surveillance drones. The U.S. government is broke that it has had to borrow more than $1 trillion from China, but somehow we have plenty of money to help modernize China's energy grid. The U.S. Congress has cut $60 million for schools on Indian reservations across the country, but somehow the IRS is able to pay out $70 million in bonuses to their workers. It is being projected that the federal budget cuts will cost the U.S. economy 1.6 million jobs to the end of 2014, but somehow the federal government has plenty of money to provide many former members of Congress with six-figure annual incomes for life. The Obama administration is forcing the U.S. Army to reduce the number of active combat brigades from 45 to 33. But the Obama administration has no problem finding millions of dollars to send to radical jihadist Syrian rebels that are beheading innocent Christians over in Syria. Barack Obama says that there simply is not any money available for White House tours, but the Obamas are able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on exotic vacations. In August, Obama and his family will be spending 8 days in a beautiful home on the Massachusetts island of Martha's Vineyard. The federal government says there was not enough money for the traditional 4th of July fireworks at many military bases around the country this year, but somehow the National Institute of Health has $509,000 to spend on a study that will send text messages in gay lingo to methamphetamine addicts to try to persuade them to use fewer drugs and more condoms. And you can see some of the places where the federal government makes absolutely no sense, and you can see why we have a national debt problem and why the people of the United States are not being helped, because this Congress, this government, is at the point where they are no help to the people anymore. The only place they are helping is themselves, the central bankers, the Fed, their friends, to make money. That is it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.